Hello, welcome to the Volleycast. I am your host, Joe Trinzi, and back on the other line, it's David Hunt. David,
What's up,
long
Joe?
time no talk.
I know. You put me in quarantine for a while, so feels good to be back.
He's coming out of podcast quarantine to
Yeah.
do that. Good talk with me.
What's going
David,
on? There's lots of stuff in the NCAA world, that's for sure.
there's a lot. There's so much going on for the fact that there's nothing going on in the sport of volleyball right now.
No, I'm with you.
When is the last time you have coached a game of volleyball, whether it was in practice or out of practice,
Yeah.
or
March
something that could be
March
classified as a game?
March 12th, we actually played one match with no fans, and I think we might have been the only college volleyball team to do that. And coaching that match, I got super fired up because it felt like practice. So, I mean, I was like pacing at the end line, and it was against Riley Salmon's team. So he probably was thinking, what the heck am I doing? But it was a cool environment. But then at the same time, it also was very, very real of like, hey, is this really the highest priority right now?
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us coach or play for fans, but it definitely was this feeling of, man, there's a lot of things that are more important than volleyball. I don't know if we should be doing this. And the next day they ended up canceling the season. So
And spring 2021 men's
yeah,
season.
spring 2021 men's season is looking a little grim right now. The fact that Pac-12 comes out and says no competition is going to take place till January 1, basketball included,
Yep.
I think is eye-opening. What's interesting from our perspective is, what are these conferences hearing? What from their medical professionals? Obviously, they're hearing different opinions because
Yep.
Pac-12 and Big Ten say they can't do it, and all of a sudden ACC, Big 12, and SEC are saying we're full steam ahead. So I don't know. And
the
WCC announced today.
Yeah.
Yeah, they announced today no fall competitions, but tennis and golf could move forward with things because they feel that that's sports that can be managed from a distance. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
There's going to be a increasing demand for gym time come the spring.
That's for sure. But then also the local clubs are having a hard time finding gym space at high schools or middle schools because it seems like those schools don't want to take on the liability, right?
Yeah, let's put off the juniors end for just a minute because I want to hear a little bit more. So you're on the Pepperdine campus. Are you going in? Are you going into your office?
Yesterday. Yeah. We were in yesterday. A big group of athletes moved back yesterday. So right now the holdup is LA County. LA County is telling us that we technically can't practice or do anything, but the guys are going to hopefully be able to condition and lift and do that stuff on campus, but there's going to be no instruction from the coaches. And I think UCLA football was doing the same thing when they found out their season was canceled.
So Pepperdine, you have athletes on campus.
Yeah.
Are you going to have in-person classes? Is it planned for the fall?
No in-person classes. It's all online. Originally, they were hoping for in-person or giving students a choice, but now it's all online. And then anything we're doing with our team is all virtual as well. Yeah. So whether it's film breakdown or we have 8 hours of virtual activity that we can do.
Right. And we have, I don't know, dozens of college athletes on campus, completely unsupervised, but they're Pepperdine students. So
yeah. So they do things. Yeah,
they're going to church. They're going to church, and they're just they're nothing but good kids. At least they're anything like the guys that I coached at Pepperdine.
Yeah. Well, right now for sure. I mean, they took their corona tests, so they spit in a little vial and it got sent in. They're hoping for the results soon, and then there's a few things that they have to test for after that. And I think you've heard about that possibly with the football players. There's some heart conditions, lung conditions that potentially could develop, so they'll have to do the antibodies test and test for that. So I mean, now what typically took a day or two for a typical athlete through the physical process is now going to take almost 2 weeks. But if it keeps them safe, I'm all for it.
Yeah, so hopefully that all of your guys and all the other Pepperdine athletes are safe, and that's all good. I mean, it's kind of interesting. So are they are they like, is the volleyball gym open? Like you can instruct them, but they're not allowed to pull out volleyballs and go in there and play.
No, nothing inside. So the beach courts on campus are open. Yeah. Beach courts down the street at Zuma are open, so they can go do that stuff with their suite mates. But they're trying basically to create this little pod of people to interact with. So I think the general rule of thumb is anything outside and distance is pretty safe. So,
yeah. Well, speaking of that, I think that's a transition to talk about the junior scene. Plenty of debate over what should or shouldn't be done. I don't.
And what are you seeing across the country? You've traveled. I've been pretty centered around Southern California. What have you seen across the country?
Yeah. So in mid-July, I got to coach my first volleyball since February, because the first couple of weeks of March I didn't have anything going on. Wasn't going out to Team Canada yet for that and all of that. So I did a camp in West Virginia, and I did a camp in North Carolina. Those were indoor volleyball camps. It was like a 10-kid sort of deal, 10 kid per court kind of deal. So that was the CDC is not issuing regulations for volleyball. Unfortunately, that hasn't been a big enough priority. But I guess we're sort of using the guidelines that they have for almost like essentially for daycare. So it's like, okay, you have a daycare, or, they kind of issue guidance for camps, just really what they're meaning more is daycare sort of type situations. So they say, hey, keep them in a group of 10 and they kind of stay together and distance where you can, etc. I coached in a mask, but it turned out to largely not be that big of a deal. The kids can't really hear you, but they don't really pay attention anyway, so that's fine. No. They're not really listening to me anyway. No.
How did you find that kids responded to you? Because I was watching Hard Knocks, and actually I got one of these things right here, one of these beautiful shields.
Yeah.
Did you find that they reacted to you differently? Did you react to the players differently? Because we heard Coach McVay on Hard Knocks talk about, hey, we need to see expressions, right? Like, we're teachers, we're trying to convey things, and just like this general. Right. I was talking about, I need expressive eyes. Maybe that's what it is. Like, what do you see with kids?
Yes. So, yeah. You know what? The kids in both West Virginia and North Carolina, I think especially West Virginia. So I'll get to that first. I think they were just so fired up to be playing volleyball that it didn't really, I mean, honestly, I just had to roll the balls out and they were pretty excited to play. And, just a few different things. First of all, I definitely had to change a few different things. I found that they could hear me. So I wore a mask. The face shield, I find that they can't hear you because it just blocks the sound so much. It winds up, you feel like you're super loud because it's just pushing the sound kind of back at you. You're in like this cone of whatever like that, but they can't hear anything. So I opted for the mask because you can kind of shout through it. And you can get close. You just raise your voice. I mean, my voice was really shot, after a couple of days, but you can just shout through it, and then you just have to pick your moments for instruction, and the instructions have to be less complicated. But as we know, actually, there's some real benefits to that. It's like you just got to be a little sharper with your expression. So they liked that. The downside is, I guess, as you and I think both try to coach, is I'd prefer to do most of my coaching one-on-one quietly. I think of the old thing is like, if you talk to one person, they hear 100% of what you say. If you talk to two people, they hear 50%. If you talk to three people, they hear, for every person, you kind of divide up how much of what you say they actually hear. So I would prefer to kind of, I like to just kind of get the drill set up and going, and then try to get all my coaching done quietly one-on-one. And you can't really do that in the camp environment. The protocol was the kids are not wearing masks. They were allowed to, but they were not. I didn't require them to. It didn't seem to be that the guidelines require that the kids wear masks, and none of them chose to wear. But I wore the whole time. So it just. But also, the adults are supposed to keep a little spacing. So it's not a situation where I can kind of come
that's
over.
The thing I like.
Can't put a shoulder on somebody and say, hand on the shoulder and say, okay, hey, here's what you're doing. Here's what I'd like you to do. Can't, no high five, keep it up. Like all of those teaching moments got a lot harder. So I really felt like, I think it's a combination of two things I would say that I try to do when I coach between these camps is like, and I could do one of the two. So one of them is sort of this idea of like constraints-based coaching. So rather than this explicit, we've talked about this in the podcast before, like rather than this very like explicit model of teaching, okay, can I set the drill up so that you have to do it a certain way in order, and you'll sort of learn what you need to learn by doing the drill. So I can do that. And that's kind of what everything was done. And then the secondary thing is like, try to find these individual teaching moments where you can have a conversation and check for understanding. And that was basically eliminated. So I really felt myself to be more of like a drill runner and a game creator, which is great for these kids and we set up, we had 10 kids a court, so we didn't play any 6-on-6, which is fine. It's, high school age kids. And, we weren't so concerned about positional specificity and all that. So lots of 2-on-2, 3-on-3 type games, change the court size, change the number of contacts, all of that. And I think they were pretty fired up. So some of the stuff that I did have to be mindful of. One of my favorite coaching moments is just coaching techniques is just to say that player's name and kind of smile real big at them. Yeah. And then they go up and maybe they do the passing the way we've been working on it. And I just say, Riley, and kind of just give a big positive look. And then, okay.
But really that looks like Riley.
But it started to look like this. Riley. And now Riley is terrified. I'm using Riley because that's my daughter's name. Riley's just terrified now because I just yelled her name and then she just sees eyes.
Yeah.
And I had to start incorporating the thumbs up.
Yeah.
That's what
give the Marv fist pump. Like
the fist pump.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to add the thumbs up to my repertoire.
All right.
And I also like sometimes I'll do that and I'll do the point, the enthusiastic name call with the point. But again, without the ability to see the smile, it just sort of looks like I'm yelling and pointing at them. So I found myself having to kind of call a timeout and explain that to the group, that I wasn't just angrily pointing at them. They just couldn't see the smile. What I need to probably have is a mask what they need to do is basically a mask that can have a changeable emoji on the front of it.
Yep. There you go.
So
you're onto something.
I think I just invented $1 million product, but I'm gonna let anybody out there run with it. Mask with changeable emoji.
But you know what, Joe, I think we've talked about this before too. Like when I was in Japan, I really saw the body language and how you present yourself and just like excitement for somebody comes across regardless, right? Yes. So like we're joking about like, they can't see your smile, but they can tell like the enthusiasm. They're like, all right, like they know what's up, right? Athletes know what's up. People know what's up. So that body language is huge. But you know what, I was talking to, I like that people have to stay away from me now, right? Like you talk about going to work.
Hey,
I like that I can stay in my
Dave, we've
office.
been social distancing for a long time, really. We were
for years.
Yeah, we really were.
Yep. Yeah, we social distanced together, and that was sort of like, hey, the understanding of you stay over in your corner, I stay in my corner. Right. We don't say anything, and there's a comfort in that, right? Like you're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing.
We were roommates on USA trips, and we social distanced from each other while we were in the same room.
Yeah, that's fair. That's real fair. Comfortably, right? Like no awkwardness. Right?
No awkwardness, not at all.
Just like you're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing.
Just like an occasional glance over lunch. That's really
for sure. Yeah, like glance down at the watch and body language, right? Like you knew. Yeah.
We knew.
And and it's difficult because I think guys, right, can be okay with that. Where I talked to Jordan and she's like, well, did you ask him about this? He's like, no, if he wanted to tell me about it, he would have told me, right? Like Joe didn't want to talk about that. Why would I ask him? So
my best friend is my best friend who doesn't live in Malibu.
All right, yeah.
My best friend outside.
I was thinking about what are you going to talk about me? Yeah.
Yeah, no. So my best friend lives in Boston, and his wife is pregnant, And him and I, we talk almost every day. You know, on text message or whatever. Like he theoretically is working for a bank, but he has a suspicious amount of time to G chat. So
I gotcha.
I check this guy, but and my wife, you know, she always asks me, "Oh, hey, how's the baby doing?" I'm like, I have no idea. Actually, I have no.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about anything personal, but
the baby must be doing good, because if he wasn't doing good or she wasn't doing good, then your friend would have said, "Yeah,
exactly,
100%." I get you.
I mean, yeah. Classic meme that's been trotted out. We're not the first people to trot out that meme, so we'll just we'll keep on moving on.
I mean, that could be
the gender differences.
Whole topic of itself.
Yeah. The newly, in my case, married. In your case, am I allowed to? Do we have to edit this out?
You can say it. Yeah.
You can say on the podcast, everybody.
Yep.
Newly engaged David Hunt.
That's right.
Newly engaged David Hunt. We'll have the relationships podcast. Will be. Premiering in September.
Yeah.
Relationship. We could probably do. There's a lot of awkward volleyball coaches out there who we actually probably could help with relationship advice.
Maybe I'm not. You know what? I'm not sure that we could help them. We could just all talk about. We all have the same issues. That's what it is.
Fair point.
Yeah, we don't have solutions, but we all run into the same problems.
You know, like volleyball coaches, we say you can't teach height. Well, there's some things that we probably can't teach some of these other volleyball coaches, but we've managed to get by despite our own weirdness.
Fair.
Our two better halves,
deficiencies. Yeah,
our two better halves, far clearly the better halves of both of our relationships. Yep. But yeah, club volleyball. So
good segue back to club volleyball.
Club volleyball.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, at least in California, CIF has announced a change in playing schedule, I guess. So the boys are bumped up. So the boys and girls will go at the same time.
Then I know that changes. What's the CIF? What's the deal with high school sports?
CIF. So basically, our California governing body for high school sports has announced that boys and girls will go December to about February. And I think if you make playoffs until about March, but that significantly changes the club schedule here because one, there's the rule that you can't play club in high school. So how does that work out? Do kids have to choose? Does somebody budge and say, we're going to adjust that? And then the second part is, can clubs, I know in Northern California, they normally would start around right now. So they've had to bump that back. And then do you have club tournaments? Is it safe to have club tournaments? Is LA County going to allow that? Is California going to allow that? So there's just a lot of unknowns. And can you start practicing while it's still up in the air? I don't know.
So either Texas, which is playing high school volleyball right now, and club volleyball all at once, all simultaneously. That's how they do it in Texas. They will either continue to surge past California in volleyball because other players will have 3 times the amount of practice reps, or they will all be sick and not be able to participate in nationals. So it's either going to be a Texas sweep or California sweep for Associated Nationals. So we'll.
And you know what? Regardless of where you're at, I think if you're a club player, if you're a youth player, if you're a club coach, just start filming what's going on in your gym. Because if you're dealing with youth players, coaches haven't been able to recruit since March, right? And regardless of how on top of it you were before March, you still are wondering, did these players continue their growth trajectory? Where are they at?
Yeah.
So I think the idea of Periscope, YouTube, just streaming is going to be huge for youth and juniors, right? Whether you're a player or a club coach or director. Yeah. So
California is done for the fall. Delaware, of which I'm not in, but I'm close to. Delaware is done for the fall. New Jersey is postponed till mid-October, but it's seeming like coaches in New Jersey are expecting it to be canceled.
So is that postponed until October, they can't practice, or what does that look like?
It seems to be can't play and maybe practice. So probably some New Jersey coach will correct me because I'm not up to date on it since maybe a week or two ago. So maybe things have also changed, but it seems like
that's a lifetime ago in COVID.
That's a lifetime in COVID years. Yeah. So I think that they are going to practice when school starts, and then maybe competitions are delayed. But some New Jersey coaches are expecting it to get canceled. Pennsylvania has not yet canceled. Pennsylvania, where I am at, seems like schools are practicing, actually, right now, practicing some volleyball.
Gotcha.
Saw football team at local high school out on their football. Looks like they are just doing some sort of no pads workouts.
Walk-through type of stuff, yeah.
And it seems like there's maybe some spacing requirements for where kids are standing and this or that. But I think it seems like there's Pennsylvania high school coaches are preparing to have a season, but the governor has maybe like advised basically it seems like the Pennsylvania State Athletic Association is just sort of putting off its decision right now. The governor has advised them to not play, but has not maybe gone one way or the other there.
Do you think it's people are afraid to make that? They don't want to be the first to make that decision, or like, I mean, obviously I'm not well versed in any of this stuff. So what is it? Why the delay, right? Why are some people so adamant about like, nope, we're not doing it. And then other people are like, yeah, let's test it out.
I'll give you my charitable and I'll give you my more negative.
All right.
I think these can both actually be true, but I think the more charitable is, well, doing nothing is a form of doing something, and it allows you to gather like more information.
Right.
You know? Yeah. So it's like, okay, right now kids aren't I would think that you just maybe wouldn't have any practice activities until school is open. It would seem to make a little bit more sense. But I think it's just like, well, let's not make a decision before we know all the information. I think that's, what more are we going to know in a week? Probably not much of anything. But that's maybe my most charitable interpretation. And I think the sort of negative interpretation, without this turning into the politics podcast, which has been premiering on Volley Talk the whole entire pandemic, is I think that people are going to be angry at anybody who cancels seasons. And I think people don't want to have people angry at them. So if somebody else makes the decision, then they can say, well, it was out of my hands. So I think that's difficult. And I think that there's an equal, maybe not an equal amount of people or an equal amount of people as angry to if you don't cancel the season. There's a lot of people really upset, for example, that AAUs went on. Seems to be people still pretty upset about it. I don't know. It's a tricky situation. That's maybe, I don't know if it's worth, well, I think it is worth getting in here because like you asked, is there going to be club volleyball this fall? There absolutely is. Well, first of all, there already is club volleyball going on right now. There's, I think that clubs in Texas have either already had tryouts or getting their tryouts ready. They have tryouts before the high school season generally. There's already clubs that are doing whatever they're allowed to be doing. For example, I went and did this clinic in North Carolina, and it's a club that it's for a high school, but the high school is closed and didn't want to rent the gym out. So this high school did the clinic at a facility that a local club goes. And the club is allowed to operate by their local regulations. It's sort of treated like a gym, and you can have this amount of people in it at this amount of time. And that's kind of how the camp was run. So we had to limit the number of kids that could be in the camp because we can only have, it's this big facility, but we're only allowed to have 30 kids in it and can only have 10 on a court. Okay. So basically you can only run 3 courts of 10 people per kid, 10 kids per court, kind of had the barriers in between and whatever that's worth. And that would not be unique. I think there's lots of clubs that are doing something that looks like volleyball, whether it's a USAV sanctioned event or it's just a camp. I mean, that's sort of the, and it'll be interesting to kind of see how that's all adapted to. I think that I know from, I guess, just sort of my selection, people I talk to, which is a fair amount of people, there's a big appetite for volleyball this fall. Kids
for sure
want to play volleyball. And
I'm ready to sign up for a camp if I can't coach. I might as well get coached by somebody.
Well, David, you should know that Gold Medal Squared, we're running beach volleyball camps, of which I've already run one, and we're running some, and we're getting them going in the fall in case your fall season has been canceled. Beach volleyball, as you know, 2-on-2, less kids on the court. It's outside. It's a perfect opportunity.
I've always wanted to beat up on, some young kids, playing beach volleyball. Actually, what would happen is, let's get real, they'd beat up on me, and it'd be
once they start going first ball over and start making you scramble, you're done. You got some nice, you got some nice deep dish hands. You know what I mean? So it's like, but if they can, if they make a move on the first contact,
yeah, or any contact, I'm screwed. No,
at that point, your biceps will not save you.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
But yeah, in all seriousness, I think that actually like beach is a great option for kids right now. I'm sort of just trying to help some players and coaches in Delaware get a beach kind of league, kind of informal, semi-formal league going for kids, because that's a good option. 2-on-2, and you're outside. That's probably what's allowed in most areas. I don't know about LA County, but it's allowed in most areas. And there's plenty of areas where you can play volleyball. So then people are going to want to do it. And so it's just kind of this question of like, and of course, I guess kids don't get to do everything that they want to do. There's 14-year-old kids that want to drive a car, and we don't let them drive a car. So, I sort of, maybe as hazardous as it may be, try to just defer to the decision makers that be in whatever my area and, state, local, national, CDC, et cetera, kind of how they say that sports should be played. It's okay. Well, is there a form of volleyball that fits into it? And in most areas, there's a form of volleyball, whether if it's 2-on-2 outside, going down to, that's probably sort of the minimum volleyball that could be played, right? 2-on-2 outside. Going up to a 6. Do I think that there's going to be fall tournaments that are 100 teams at the tournament in a convention center or something? First of all, I just don't know about I think who's going to put that together. Like, how is that going to
like, who wants to accept that responsibility?
Who's what convention center is going to do that? Like, who's going to open up a new contract?
How'd they do AAUs? I mean, it's
an existing event that was already on the calendar. It's an existing event that's on the calendar, and the Florida, like whatever state, local, et cetera, regulations were open for those sorts of events at that time. So I think that's kind of how it gets run, is you just look at it and it's like, well, it's a legal event. But in terms of getting approval for a new event, you know what I mean? I think it's easier to keep something that's already on the calendar than it is to start something anew. Like,
that's a good point.
Once if the SEC cancels fall sports, the threshold for them to then, what would the threshold have to be for them to say, oh wait, actually we can restart? It would have to be functionally zero. So, so I think that's sort of these deals. So I don't see how a sort of large scale national tournament that we tend to associate club volleyball with, maybe actually a little less in Southern California, because there's so much good volleyball in Southern California, even like the regional mandatories are pretty high level. But for most of the club volleyball country, we associate club volleyball, good club volleyball, with like this, going to qualifiers, going to multi-day tournaments, going to things like that. And I'm not, I don't know what the ability to do that kind of stuff is, but I'm sure there's going to be demand for local single day, whatever amount of kids you're allowed to have. If you're allowed to have 25, you'll play a match.
And has your perspective changed now that you're a parent, Joe? Like, have you noticed a shift in like how you view things now that you have a little one that you got to take care of?
Yeah, well, in all aspects of life, for sure. As it relates to how I would have thought about, I'm more careful, I guess, with my own self. I mean, my daughter is not coming to any of this stuff, but I'm just conscious of the fact that, like, well, you know, if I die, my wife will kill me for having to raise the kid by herself.
Yeah, she'd kill you twice for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, I'm more conscious of that, my personal risk, but I would say it's pretty conscious of some of that beforehand.
Well, plus you're trying to live to 150, so you can't, you're only a third of the way there, not even. So,
well, not want to. I plan on it.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Right, you and Bryson DeChambeau, 150 easily.
Yeah, so. Well, if I could just hang on long enough for the singularity to kick in, and I can just get my consciousness. Not that this body is going to be around to 150, because let's face it, this body's not that great now.
But I remember that was your takeaway from Sapiens. Not that we're doing a book review, but
absolutely,
we're talking about that book.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to get into the futurology podcast, which will be premiering in October on the Volleycast.
On the Volleycast,
it's going to be cyborg. I mean, my father is a cyborg. He has a pacemaker. His heart would not operate without the machine that is inside running 24/7, and every now and then needs to be tweaked or literally have the battery replaced. They had a recall on my dad's pacemaker.
That's pretty scary, right? Think about that.
Warning language. Isn't that a bitch?
Yeah.
You have a recall warning. He had to go in and get some part replaced on it because it had a recall on it. You think that you think of that for
how would you like to be the quality control guy? Hey, sir, excuse me. I think we put out a faulty product. On what? Pacemakers.
Yeah, that's brutal. Absolutely.
That was like when we were younger, right? The Prius. I don't know if it was the Prius, but there was some car that if you accelerated, you just couldn't get it to stop accelerating, and it was like, how would you like to figure that one out?
It was Toyota or Volkswagen, one of those two.
Yeah. Just kept accelerating on. Yeah.
Well, my next cybernetic is going to be the emoji mask.
Oh yeah.
So obviously, the smart mask that is a mask, but also matches your mouth or face. I mean, Google's
your inner. If it was inner feelings, that would really get you though as a coach, because really, right? Sometimes we've all been there, right? Ooh, bad pass, but it's like, hey, nice job. Yeah. But then really, if the mask was frowning, it was like, oh, that's.
We can win. It would be like a Pinocchio. Your mask would grow somehow. We can win this game, and then you're like, Coach, we see that you.
Yeah. Actually, that Geico commercial with Pinocchio. Yeah.
That's what we need.
Yeah.
Did we hit everything? Do we hit everything that we need to talk about this?
I think so.
We didn't get to, we'll have to call back another time next week. Talk about our takeaways from Marv's session, which was the last of our coaching workshop series. Marv really closed it out well.
Yeah. You went with the big guns. Send it. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, and I think I was telling you, it's always interesting for me. I mean, I've had 14 years of hearing greatness. So it's always fun for me to hear what sticks with people, because I think every day, whether I like it or not, I've sort of become accustomed to his little nuggets. And, maybe with me, he strongly suggests things to the point where, if I don't do them, he just keeps bringing them up until they do happen. I think that came up in the question and answer a few times, but
we'll have to dive into that. It was a session I found pretty inspiring, and as it is a lot of times when you talk to Marv and just seeing all the coaches there, it was a pretty cool array. We had coaches that I know are first year college coaches, and we had coaches that have been to the Final Four. We had multiple Olympians on the podcast, multiple former Olympic players who are now coaches on the podcast, and it was I got a workshop, webinar.
The ultimate takeaway for people that don't know Marv or haven't spent too much time around him is just and Karch is the same way, right? You couldn't find a person that's just a better human being, right? Just genuine, open, nothing to hide. Hey, the people I'm around, I want what's best for them. And I think there's no coincidence that they both have had success in their own realms. and they just happen to be two just great people. So I think that's a good takeaway. So.
It's a good place to end it. If you want to check out that session with Marv, you can't, not yet.
You cannot.
But soon, I'm gonna. I've taken all the recordings of the session. I've taken them all off the scoutbb.com website, and I'm gonna make sure they're all kind of edited properly. Just upgrade a little bit of that, and
I thought you were going to announce Scout BB 2.0 or something like that.
No, it's extremely exciting. Basically, just more of a maintenance, and then I'm going to put them together all in a package, so people will want to kind of get all of them. They can do that. I want to make sure it's a reasonable price and all that. So awesome. I'm going to have that up by the end of the month, and maybe we'll catch up next week. Which who knows in Corona time what will be going on next week with the state of volleyball.
Yeah.
I think that all NCAA volleyball for the fall might be canceled by the next time that we talk.
No way. I'm gonna. You know what? Can we bet? I don't even know if I can bet on that. So my general rule of thumb from compliance is
I think you
don't bet on it. But I'm
definitely not allowed to bet on it.
Yeah,
but you can.
Pretty much.
I don't know. What can you do? Instead,
but I'm going to say that I don't think all volleyball is going to be canceled. I think there's some conferences that are going to push forward. And I think some people are viewing it as like now there's a larger slice of the pie to be had because some people have dropped out of the race. So,
all right.
We'll see.
Next week, we'll talk about volleyball and my favorite subject, pie.
All right.
Until then.
Sounds good.
Later, Dave.